All righty. So let's pray in as everyone is joining us today. And let's just close our eyes and take a deep breath. And let's just breathe in the beautiful, high, profound, wise energy of all of these souls coming to a class to talk about our innate divinity, as Eric Butterworth lays it out in his beautiful book, Discover the Power Within You. And through this 3-week class, we will all be elevated and uplifted by these phenomenal ideas that rewrite the Christian dogma that many of us grew up with and really help us appreciate the Bible from this gorgeous metaphysical perspective that Eric Butterworth lays out. And so we even call in the soul of Eric Butterworth to help us understand this work and to help us absorb it and live with it, remembering our divinity every single day. And so it is. All right. So I am going to ask you guys to unmute. Yeah. So I want to start right away, and I know people are still joining, but I love this book. I have to say, I love Emily Cady, who we did last time. I love her as a soul, as a person, and Eric has a totally different vibe, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but you just can't dispute the brilliance of this man's teachings. Oh my God. And I love it that he even opens his book with the prologue about the Hindu legend. So as many of you know, I lived in a Hindu ashram. I love Hinduism and Buddhism. And I'm also about to be an ordained unity minister. So Eric Butterworth had me right away when he opens, and I'll just briefly summarize it. He says, according to an old Hindu legend, there was a time when all men and women were gods, but they so abused their divinity that Brahma, the chief god, decided to take it away from men and women and hide it where they would never again find it. Where to hide it became the big question. And then he talks about all the places they talked about, where should we hide the divinity? And then finally, Brahma says, here is what we will do with man's divinity. We will hide it deep down in himself so that he will never think to look for it there. Ever since then, the legend concludes, humans have been going up and down the earth, climbing, digging, searching for something that is already within ourselves. And then he closes it by saying, 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus found this inner divinity, shared its secret, but in the movement that sprang up in his name, the divinity of man has been the best kept secret of the ages. That is so beautiful. And that sets the tone for the book and for all the messages that he is sharing in here. And just to give you a quick little overview of who Eric Butterworth was, he was born in 1916, and I thought it was fascinating that he had started to study at Unity Village to become a Unity minister. And when World War II happened, he left to go be in the Army, where he was in the medical corps. He was a medical personnel and a chaplain and a counselor. And when the war ended, he returned to Unity Village and finished his studies and became a Unity minister. And then he launched 3 very significant Unity ministries. One was in Pittsburgh. One is at the very famous Detroit Unity Temple. But the most famous one was when he went to New York City and he started speaking first at his services were at Carnegie Hall. And then they grew from there to other places, Avery Fisher Hall, et cetera, where they would have weekly attendance of thousands of people. So he also attracted the interest of Oprah and of course, Maya Angelou, right? And he talked to them about this new understanding of God. And some of you may know that because of Eric Butterworth, Maya Angelou was studying unity principles. She said, I'm not going to become a minister, but she was taking all the classes in Unity Ministerial School, and Eric Butterworth inspired her to do that. So he had a huge influence on the world, and a very positive one. So in our class, even though it's only a 3-week class, we can really dig into his main principles. See, we still don't have everybody here, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going, and they'll all join us. But tonight we're going to cover chapters 1 through 6, of course, superficially, because we have 1 hour, but hopefully this will really help all of you appreciate this profound message that really is the core of Unity teachings, that the divinity of God lives within all of us. So chapter 1, would anyone like to talk about what caught their attention in chapter 1, or what they liked, especially about chapter 1? I have my own little place I'll mention here, but I wanted to hear from you all first. Oh, don't be quiet tonight, people. I need you to talk.
Read it.
There you go, Vicki. Okay. Well, does anybody want to say something, or should I just babble away here?
Oh, I got my hand up.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't. You know what? I've had a migraine today. I'm having trouble seeing.
Sorry.
I'm used to them. I've had them my whole life, so it's no big deal. But if you raise your hand, I'm probably not going to see it tonight. So you just got to step up. All right, Verl, go for it.
Okay. Well, to me, the whole chapter is summed up on page 5. The very, ending, when he's talking about the poem, and the rediscovery of the teachings of Jesus Christ, a reappraisal of the achievements of his life, and a renaissance of the Christian faith. And then when he talks about the great within, as inspired philosophers and poets and mystic teachers throughout all the ages, none has put it more eloquently than Robert Browning in his poem. I don't know how you say the poem, but the title of it. But I mean, this poem really spoke to me.
Yeah. Do you want to read it to us, Earl?
Pardon?
Why don't you read it to us? It's a beautiful poem.
Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outward things, whatever you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness, and around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in. Isn't that awful? Gross flesh? Anyway, this perfect, clear perception, which is truth, a baffling and perverting carnal mesh, binds it and makes all error. And to know rather consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, than in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without.
That's so beautiful.
It really is. And to me, that just really, God lives within us. Jesus lives within us.
Right. And, I thought it was also interesting because he was writing this book. Was it the 60s when this book came out? Let me see what it says here. Yeah, I think. Find the 1968 was the original publishing. And in the first chapter, he talks about LSD and drugs because it was the 60s, right? And a lot of the new thought leaders of the time were saying that you could reach enlightenment or find God through drugs and stuff. I mean, I was of the generation where my generation tried to see if that was true or not. And it certainly didn't turn out to be true. But he says this really cool thing. He says psychedelics have helped to prove the existence of a non-material world of spirit within man. And some of you may know that now they're doing amazing research with things like psilocybin and mushrooms in controlled research settings, where they really help grieving people to access the divine realms and even communicate with their departed and have a healing conversation. So, but he says, perhaps we will ultimately agree that it is an illicit picking of the lock of the door to the superconscious. And that is so cool, because we all know that every day we can't be doing drugs to access our divinity, but every day we can be meditating, going into the silence and connecting to that divinity within us. And I know I sound like a broken record here, but I talk all the time about how we have to meditate every day, because it is the one moment that we pause, drop the physical, and really reach out for that connection to our divinity, to the invisible. So, and Lisa's here. She's known me a long time, and I've been teaching this a long time. And I also want to help you guys realize meditation has a bad reputation, and I am going to constantly be pushing against that, because people think it's hard. They think it takes a lot of patience. No, if you sit down and use a sacred sound or a prayer like a mantra and just repeat it, you get into a rhythm, you use a mala bead to get you in that rhythm, it becomes this place of absolute peace. You're not trying to get answers to things. You're not trying to solve problems or have miracles occur. You are simply quieting the mind so you can access your divinity. Boy, isn't that worth a little time every day? So in chapter 1, what my notes were is that Butterworth says that our quest is to explore the inner depths of ourselves and rediscover the teachings of Jesus as a teacher, showing us the path to realize our divinity within. So when we go in breakout rooms tonight, your question is, what does that mean to you that you have divinity within you? Do you feel that? Do you have access to it? How do you connect to it? But we're not ready to break out yet. So if we go to chapter 2, this chapter is called The Great Discovery. And this is where he really starts breaking it down about the life of Jesus. And I loved this so much. There's this thing he says on page 7. Let's see. So Jesus broke the partition between man and God. And he says somewhere here, if I can find it, that until Jesus, God was this outside external force, right? And then Jesus's message, even though it's been misinterpreted for a long time, was no, God is, where's the quote? I can't find it. Up to this point, man had existed in the consciousness of separation from God. We could pray to God, we could talk to God, we could receive help and guidance from him, but God was always out there and man was down here. Now, Jesus knew what the psalmist had implied when they said, "Be still and know that I am God." Jesus discovered this great truth, and that was his message to us. And of course, that got kind of changed and rewritten, but that was the most, I love that picture of Jesus as this innocent boy, like studying things and learning things and meditating and going to the desert, and suddenly really learning and just realizing, having this moment of enlightenment. Wait, God is in all of us. And then coming back into the civilization of the time in Jerusalem and trying to teach that amidst all the Jewish teachings and all the dogma that was going on at the time. But throughout the New Testament, his original words were always about not follow me as God, follow my way to connect to God, who God is in all of us. And there's a big difference there. He said, follow me into divine consciousness, which, yes, That's beautiful. All right, comments about chapter 2, anybody? Don't be shy. There's no wrong answers. Speak up. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Sharon. I thought right in the beginning of chapter 2, and I'm on a Kindle, so I don't have the same page numbers that you do.
Mhm.
But right there where he said the great event was not the birth of Jesus, but a kind of awakening that took place within him during his years of growth, that he awakened this. It wasn't his birth, but we've always placed so much emphasis on his
Right.
birth.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's beautiful. And, you know, in unity teachings, when we look at Christmas in a metaphysical way, that's what we're saying, you know, is that no, it's not about the day that this man was born, because even historically we know that's inaccurate. It's about the birth of our understanding of our own divinity. And even for Easter, we're in Easter weekend now. And Lisa and I were talking because we'd grown up Catholic, and, you know, the Friday is all about the crucifixion and the suffering of Christ, of Jesus. And yet in Unity's way of viewing that, it's that we are crucifying or letting go of the ego, the monkey mind, the self that believes that we are separate from God. That is what we are letting go of in the crucifixion. And then on Easter Sunday, we are rising fully into our highest divine consciousness, following the lead, the way shower of Jesus, and how his story was all about that. So, and Jesus broke the partition between man and God. That is such a beautiful statement. Anybody else for chapter 2? All right, I'm going to go to chapter 3, and then we'll go do some breakout rooms. Chapter 3. Oh, wait, I wanted to ask you a question about chapter 2. Did you grow up believing in a God outside of yourself? Most of us have. And when and how has that shifted? Or sometimes do you vacillate? Because I've noticed that, you know, even though I'm completely immersed in unity principles and believe it totally, I will reach out and say, God, help me or enlighten me, you know. And I remember bringing that up to one of my instructors one day years ago when I first started my classes. And he said to me, he said, you know, God is everywhere. God is the consciousness of this universe. So whether you turn within to connect or you call out to that consciousness, our prayers are always heard. And I thought that was so beautiful. So we don't have to quit saying, God, help me. We just have to know that that God consciousness is the essence of our loving divine universe. In chapter 3, let's see. Oh, the great decision. That is a beautiful, the mystical decision to become Christ, one with God, which is different than and more powerful than accepting Christ as your personal savior. That's a big difference between unity and traditional Christianity. So the big decision is the mystical decision to become Christ-like or one with God, which is different than and more powerful than accepting Christ outside of ourselves as our personal savior. Any thoughts on that or on the rest of things in chapter 3? Hey, Linda, did you have something to say?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to comment on what you said prior. I was fortunate my parents divorced when I was 5. And I lived with my mother mainly. And we went to Unity. So I've been in Unity for so long. And it's a savings grace is what it is, because the teaching is exactly what you're saying. It is so different.
Mhm.
And it puts the onus on us to connect. Instead of waiting for a savior, we are the savior.
Right.
I
I
just wanted
love that. Thank you for saying that. And where do you live, Linda?
I have two houses. I'm in Phoenix right now, and then and I go to the 16th Street Unity,
Oh,
and
good.
then I have a house in Pine too. But
Oh, awesome.
yeah.
Well, I look forward to meeting you sometime there. Boy, you are blessed that you grew up in Unity, you know,
Yeah,
because not many of us were blessed like that. Like we had to fight our way through whatever sort of Christianity we were born in. And you know, usually we had to walk away from it to figure out what did work for us, what we did believe in. And so books like this, when they come along, you know, I keep thinking, gosh, if anybody had ever given me this book to read when I was growing up Catholic, I would have walked away then and gone and found a Unity church somewhere, because it has so much truth in it. And in Catholicism, we were guilty from the moment we were born of original sin. And I love what Butterworth says about original sin. But we'll get to that in a minute. I don't think he says that in chapter 3, does he? Yeah. He says we must make the mystical decision to become Christ. And as you all probably know, Christ is not the name of Jesus. It is a state of divine consciousness. So Jesus attained the Christ-like consciousness. And so we have that Christ consciousness in our hearts, which is the consciousness of love, of compassion, of divinity. And that is our innate nature. And it's only when we get down here in the physical world and our ego is trying to tell us things that aren't true and trying to just be sure that we survive. That's the ego's only concern, is to keep us alive, basically. And so it fills us with all kinds of worry and anxiety. But our soul and our heart is always coming in with that higher consciousness. We just learn to ignore that or not channel that out when we're growing up, because we agree with the ego at some point. Oh, well, I got to survive here. It's tough here. But then we have to unlearn that when we embrace that our own divinity lives within, and it's more correct and more powerful and more transformative when we listen to that than when we listen to the ego mind or the monkey mind. So I think, let me see here. I'm going to have us go into breakout rooms for these first 3 chapters and have us discuss what they mean to us. And so your questions for chapter 1 are, what does it mean to you to access your divinity within? And for chapter 2, did you grow up believing in a God outside of yourself? And has that shifted, or how do you manage that? And chapter 3, Jesus's message was, let our divinity transcend our humanity. My God, I love that. Let our divinity transcend our humanity. We must make the mystical decision to become Christ. So what does that mean to you? And how do you or we decipher that divinity from the ego mind and the ego voice? That's an important question, I think. So let me get you in some breakout rooms here and we'll talk about it. All right, I'll see you in the room. Have fun. I think that's working now. Yes, okay. Hey, if you all want me to say those questions again, the chapter 1 question is, Butterworth says that our quest is to explore the inner depths of ourselves and rediscover the teachings of Jesus as a teacher, showing us the path to realize our divinity within. What does this mean to you, and how do you access your divinity within? And chapter 2, did you grow up believing in a God outside of yourself, and has that shifted, or how do you manage that? And chapter 3, let our divinity transcend our humanity. What does that look like, and how do we decipher our divinity voice from our ego voice? Take it away. That should be a juicy conversation, you guys, so get talking. Introduce yourselves to each other.
Hello, I'm Maggie.
Hi, I'm Gwen.
Hi,
Hi,
I'm
I'm
Marcia.
Gwen, why don't you jump in and start talking about those questions?
Sure. So the first question was, what does it mean to access God from within?
Mhm.
I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian church, and I later in life converted to Catholicism and have since, been in Episcopal churches and more progressive churches. And I got very into like Marcus Borg and some of the Jesus Seminar folks. And I'd say I'm more in a universalist period in my life.
Mhm.
But, I know I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my grandmother, who took me to that fundamentalist church, and where I learned the songs and really came to value my spirituality. We were always taught that we would potentially be the only Jesus somebody ever sees. So that really made an impression on me.
That's a beautiful, say that again. That is beautiful. Say it again.
That we might be the only Jesus that someone ever sees or encounters. So the way that we interact with people, the choices that we make are, affect the people around us. So that's a sort of power. And I think that, I think to that extent, there has always been a sense that that the power of God is within me, whether I was,
Mhm.
allowing God to inspire me to act. But I think that, before it was sort of based on having the correct beliefs and
Mhm.
and doing things like that. But as I've gotten older, it's just become more of an acceptance that God loves me. That I really am an expression of God, and that He has empowered us to do good things. So I feel like the power of God is within for us to harness. And I think that kind of, go ahead.
That is really beautiful. I think you should become a unity minister.
Really?
All right, I have to go make sure the other groups are not just partying. I'll be back. Let's see.
What? Yeah.
Well, if
So-
Verl and Kate are here, you guys don't need me.
So we're not making a lot of progress on talking about the chapter. We're
Um,
making a lot of progress getting to know each other.
oh, good. That's important. That's important.
Yeah.
And just be sure that you do talk about, especially chapter 3, letting our divinity transcend our humanity. What does that look like? And how do we decipher our divine consciousness self from the ego self?
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? I'm going to write them down.
Yeah. That's Joanne, or who's
Yes.
that? Yes.
Yeah. She's our secretary.
All right, Joanne.
Yeah.
All right. So the first question was, if Butterworth is teaching us to explore the inner depths of ourselves and rediscover the teachings of Jesus as a teacher showing us the path to realize our divinity within, what does that mean to you? And how do you access your divinity within? And chapter 2, did you grow up believing in a God outside of yourself, and how has that shifted, or how do you manage that? And chapter 3, let our divinity transcend our humanity. What does that look like? And how do we decipher our divine self and our divine voice from the ego and the ego self?
Okay.
And you have a lot of wise people in this group, so you guys should be coming up with some good stuff.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Bye.
chapter 2,
always
Oh,
believed it's how you live your life every day, not that you have to be sitting in a church every Sunday for an hour, that's not going to make anything any different. We're talking about the second chapter now. So
oh, good. I'm so happy to be in this group with my Lisa and my Gail here.
we were saying this
Also-
book is a little hard. Like I would get to the bottom of the page and say, oh, I have to go back and read that,
I know, it's
Mhm,
really
it
a
is.
book. Yeah, you have to like spend a year per chapter in it, I
Really.
think,
Yeah.
to talk about it in depth and absorb it. But what are
Mhm.
what are your thoughts about growing up with the God outside of you, and how do you manage thinking about that differently, or do you?
Well, I grew up Southern Baptist, and we always prayed for specific things. And then when I read Eric Butterworth's other book, I can't think of the name of it. Is it The Universe is Calling, or is that the one?
Or was it
It's the one about
economic-
prayer.
Oh, the
Universe-
prayer one. Yeah, I can't think of the
Yeah,
name of that either.
The universe, something about the universe. Anyway, that really changed my way of praying.
Yeah.
Because I grew up like, oh, God, please, let me get elected cheerleader. Oh, let me have this, let me have that, let me get that prom dress. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? It was always praying for things, and I never thought
Right.
about praying for guidance or anything like that.
That's so funny because I don't know, I think I might have been educated by some pretty enlightened Catholic nuns, because
Uh-huh.
I was taught, I went to Convent of Mercy for 18 years. So
Wow.
obviously I was brainwashed, but I was taught that we only ask for wisdom and charity and mercy and love, not for things.
Mhm.
Catholics
Mhm.
were all into poverty consciousness.
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of people from traditional Christian religions where, if they wanted a bike for Christmas, they needed to pray for it. And if God
Right.
didn't give it to them, it meant that they had done something
Right.
bad or something, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Boy, that's a hard act to live by, right, Sharon?
Oh yes, it is. I mean, golly. Mm. Especially, I think when you grow up really poor, like I did, then you think, well, what's wrong? Why did we not have all this stuff? You know what I mean? We just not be good people. You
Right.
do when you grow up in that
Yeah.
that mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Larry? And oh, I know Lisa's over there. She's being quiet though. But Larry, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, like I said before, my folks were Christian Scientists, okay, and it was pretty hard to deal with that religion, in my point of view, okay, and so anyway, but we've been with Unity back in Munster, Indiana, and then we got sort of dropped out of it for a while, and now we're back in Scottsdale, and we
Mhm.
got back into church, I would say about a year ago.
Mhm.
And so,
Good.
I believe, but I'd like to believe a little more, okay, and
Yeah.
maybe understand it a little bit more. And that's why I signed up for the course. I haven't received my book yet, okay. I
Oh,
have it on my Kindle, but it's so hard to
Mhm.
maneuver from chapter to chapter.
It
So,
is.
and but yeah, I tell you, usually when I read religion, it's tough for me to really understand and get to the, really understand it, put it that way.
yeah.
And it sort of goes over my head. So I would like to try this and really dive into it a little bit more, and hopefully get a little more out of it, put it that way.
This is a perfect book, you know, for you to kind of dive in and get more realigned with your divine self, because Eric Butterworth will challenge you on every page, the way he writes the Bible, rewrites everything. It's so amazing. You have to really contemplate it all. We're going to get to chapter 6 tonight, where he rewrites the Beatitudes, which as a Catholic girl, I grew up loving those Beatitudes, but I do love what Butterworth does with them. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But you guys keep talking. You're doing great.
What is the next question, Sue? What is the third question? Let our divinity transcend what?
Let our divinity transcend our humanity. And what does that look like to you? And how do we decipher our divinity from our ego?
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sue, I was talking about right before you came on screen, I was saying how that was really my favorite when he dissected every single Beatitude. Just love that.
Yeah.
It's really, really great.
I-
Gail did.
I actually typed them up as affirmations because
Wonderful.
I want to.
That's beautiful.
I made a copy for Hannah too, and I stuck it on her dresser. And I just thought they were so beautiful. I can't wait to talk about that chapter.
Yes.
Great idea, Gail.
All right. Well, you guys finish up. I'm going to have to bring everybody back in so we can get to that chapter before class is over.
Okay.
All right. See you in a minute.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Oh, I think that's really important.
Oh, I came back too soon.
Well, that's okay. You're here with me.
Hello. And Crystal Kitty is right in front of me.
Aww.
Her.
Here they all come. Aww.
That's such a great idea, Gail. I'm going to take your idea.
The affirmation. So that's the affirmation after each Beatitude in chapter 6. Okay, I got through the first Beatitude. Yeah, okay. Cool.
Yeah. Gail, while we wait for everybody to come back, do you want to share some of those that you wrote down?
Well, I took them out of the chapter from the book. So
Okay.
I wrote, do you want me to read them?
Sure.
Or no? Okay. So the first one was, I am open and receptive to the inflow and the outpouring of all there is in God. I am grateful for challenges that lead me beyond my extremity to God's opportunity. I am in tune with God. That which is God inspired and God directed shall prevail. I seek with all my heart, with all my mind and heart, and I shall find. I keep my thoughts centered upon only those things that I want to see manifest in my life. I see the world not as it is, but as I am, and I am in spiritual unity with God. I am a child of God and I act like one. I am a radiating center of peace and love. And in my quest for truth, I press on past my humanity to a deepening awareness and an increasing releasement of my potential divinity. So those are the 6.
So beautiful.
No, the 8, sorry.
So you guys, what Gail was just reading was Butterworth's rewritten Beatitudes in the 6th chapter. And we're about to get to that right now, because many of us have loved the Beatitudes. And yet to hear how Butterworth turns them into affirmations is it's very beautiful, very powerful. But going back to chapter 4 now, my favorite thing in this chapter, of course, is on page 36. I know it's different on whatever book you have, but he has this amazing quote. Let me find it. There is no place where God is not. And if you think about nothing else after this class, use that sentence as a mantra. There is no place where God is not, because that even means inside of me. And even when we doubt ourselves, when we think we're unworthy, not good enough, there is no place where God is not. even inside of me. And that helps us lift up to that higher consciousness. And in chapter 4, I remember the first time I read that and I came across that sentence, I just burst into tears because I thought, there's no place where God is not. Like, that changes my whole view of life and of the world. Even we can think, oh, there's wars and there's crazy people doing horrible things and blah, 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 blah. Delete, delete. There is no place where God is not. What are your thoughts on that? Oh, don't be shy. Come on.
Well, one of the places that I see it is this war in Ukraine and the horror that that is.
Mhm.
But on the other side, the beautiful things that people are doing for one another to help
Right.
and to alleviate some of the terror that they're going through.
Right.
And you read about this selflessness and this love that people give, trying to help those in need.
Yeah.
I just am so inspired by that.
Yeah.
It just gives me hope.
And so, Linda, that perfectly describes what you just said. It perfectly describes our dilemma as humans. When we take a human incarnation, we have to walk with one foot in this physical world and all of its painful, terrible challenges, losing loved ones, having war, having illness, all these painful, tough things about the human experience. But we also have our divinity with us every minute of every day. That gives us a way to focus on the goodness in things. So many of us here on the call have been through grief, devastating loss. And so we know that balance. Yes, we're always going to miss our loved ones so much. It's part of our human experience. We will always long for them, always grieve for them. And yet, our immense, powerful divinity within knows that our loved ones live on. There is no death. And so being aware of that consciousness while we walk through grief and pain is our dance here. And when we can bring it back to there is no place where God is not, we can even find that divine consciousness in our moments of greatest pain. Because we're not going to lie and say, oh, life here is wonderful, God's in everything, blah, 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 blah. I am not one of those kind of ministers. I'm saying this place is tough as heck down here on earth. But the way we navigate it is by constantly seeking the divine perspective in our own hearts and seeing that in the world, even when we are looking at tragedy. We're not denying tragedy, but we are finding the divinity within it. There is no place where God is not. So what are your thoughts on that?
I love everything you just said. I totally resonate with everything you just said. It's so beautiful. It's so true.
Oh, Gail. Well, that's because I love you, Gail.
Love you too.
I'm prejudiced because I've known some of these people for many years, and I got to say, Gail is an angel. And if you get to hear her story sometime, you'll just fall in love with her too. So when you all are in your breakout rooms, I hope you do get to know each other a little. So other thoughts on chapter 4?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I belong to a codependency group, and they talk a lot about higher power. And there were 3 of us in the group. There were probably a lot more, but there were a number of us. I was born and raised Catholic, and so I was always taught what you were saying earlier about the God out there. So when I think about higher power and turning things over to it, there are 3 of us who kind of made a subgroup to just try. One's a pastor's son, and he have had the same feelings I do, but I don't exactly know what that means. So I was wondering if you.
Yeah, that's a great thing to talk about, turning it over and surrendering to higher power. What if we think of it this way? I surrender to the lesson at hand, knowing that my ego can't think its way through it, but that my divine consciousness and the divine consciousness of this universe can carry me through it and help me see the solution. So I am surrendering to my divinity. I'm releasing my ego's attachment to where it goes and how it turns out. And I'm surrendering to divine consciousness. Does that kind of make sense to you? Is that a better way to frame it?
It does. Thank you.
You know, one thing I've learned is that when we're in grief and when we're in pain of any kind, if we reach that point where we can say, and this certainly has to do with addiction, it has to do with codependency, everything. If we reach that point where we can say, I surrender to the lesson, I don't have the answers, I really don't know anything. I surrender what needs to happen here for my highest good and the highest good of all. There's so much release in that. And there is so much peace in it. Like I even notice it, like I had a ocular migraine today, and I've been getting them like once a week now for months. And so I have these two options. When the migraine starts, the ego wants to say, oh my God, this is horrible. You shouldn't be getting these all the time. It just wants to go down the rabbit hole. And you guys know that rabbit hole I'm talking about. And yet my higher consciousness says, oh, surrender. Like maybe your body needs to rest. Maybe your body needs to close your eyes. Surrender to the wavy lines. Look how beautiful they are. They show you a kaleidoscope world. And really, seriously. And so we always have those two opposing viewpoints. And what happens is we get addicted to following the ego down the rabbit hole, because that's how the world works mostly here. And yet the minute we seek that other perspective, that divine consciousness perspective, there is so much surrender and peace in that for all of us. All right, thoughts on, let's see, chapter 4. My thing is God's desire in you to express perfectly through you is so great that you never completely reap the harvest of error and always reap more than you sow of good. I think this is the best understanding of karma I've ever read, because even in the Hindu and Buddhist paths that I studied, they talked about karma in a very punishing way. You know, like if you're this bad thing in your lifetime, then you got to come back and suffer through that. And that felt so Catholic to me. That felt like, oh, so it's just another way of saying if you misbehave, you're going to go to hell, you know? And so I really started exploring, like, what does that mean? And I love what he says, that God is in us expressing so great that it's never just a tit for tat universe. It's never us getting punished for our actions. Instead, the way I see it is that we have our own realizations as we evolve, and especially when we cross over at the end and we have a soul review where we see it from our soul's perspective. And in those moments we go, oh, look, I should have loved people more. Oh, I feel so bad that I hurt that person. Like those are just our own lessons that we see and we learn. And that's my understanding of karma. It's no one else or nothing else punishing us. It's us learning what we've done, how we functioned here, and feeling the pain of any time that we've hurt others so that we can do better and be better and grow our consciousness more. Any thoughts on that, you Catholics in the group?
Well, you could say that karma is feedback.
How so? Tell us.
Well, like you mentioned, that if you've done something in the past and you're uncomfortable with it or whatever, and then all of a sudden the light goes on and you understand what it is you did and why you wish you hadn't.
Right.
And it's like, okay, this is feedback.
Right, right.
I'm going to look at that and I'm going to run with it and change and do it better the next time, deal differently in the situation the next time.
And that's so good, Linda. And a part of that is we have to be turning within enough that we come to those realizations. And the hard part of being in the physical world is you can go for decades just partying and playing and watching TV and blaming the world for all your problems. I have a family member who's like that. Nothing is his fault. He's done nothing wrong. But I do know before his life is over, he will have some sort of awakening, because I believe that we all come here to awaken. And I don't mean a painful thing. I just mean he'll have a moment where he goes, wow, maybe I could have done this differently. And it doesn't have to be a punishment moment. It just has to be a moment of going, oh, now I understand. Now I know what love really is. And now I want to love better and live better.
I have a Buddhist meditation teacher, and he says karma is habit energy. And we're constantly teaching ourselves, we're teaching our mind patterns. And, once we're in the present moment, then we can break those patterns and change our habit energy. But, it made sense. Up till then, and I really appreciate what was just said about karma. I definitely understand that. But it's also true that, the reason we do things the same way over and over and over again, and that is kind of our karma, because that's what we're teaching our minds to do.
And Joanne, what's so interesting about that is I also think we have ancestral patterns of behavior that we're sort of inheriting, like there's a certain flavor to the way, for example, my mom's family interacted with each other and were kind of mean to each other. And so, yes, I came in inheriting that pattern, from ancestors and from watching it unfold in front of me when I was small. And yet I believe on a soul level that if I break that pattern in myself, if I wake up to it in this lifetime and go, no, I am not going to ever be mean. I am going to be compassionate and kind and loving, that I'm actually helping the whole ancestral lineage, the whole parental lineage of my family be able to make that shift themselves, because I'm sort of raising the bar of our ancestral consciousness. So that might be too out there for some of you, but I really believe that's true.
No, he actually has said that. And he said that, that's another reason not to judge our parents because it was passed down. So yeah. I think very insightful.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from people about this? It's a worthwhile discussion.
Yeah.
Actually, I've never thought about karma ever. So this is brand new to me. So thanks for bringing it up.
So Larry, did you grow up in any kind of a Christian household, or how were you raised?
Yeah, well, it was in Science.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not sure I know exactly what they believe in. Like what do they teach?
Well, it was just hard to accept what they were trying to throw at you. It's everything isn't perfect all the time, and how do you understand what is perfect and what is not perfect? So anyway, it was tough. I had 4 other brothers, and we all sort of didn't fully grasp it. We still remember some of the sayings and stuff like that. Okay. And, divine love always has met and always will meet, stuff like that. And, but I guess I never really implemented it into my life. Okay. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But, so that's why I signed up. I was really interested to find more about his book, and I'll dive into it as soon as I get it. Okay.
Yeah, well, we're really glad you're here with us.
So,
I love
thank
all
you.
the different backgrounds that everyone comes from, their own religion, spiritual backgrounds, and what kind of gets them to a class like this. I've always believed that it's when we hit a moment of pain or reinvention, especially grief, that we start going, wait a minute, I need to understand why I'm here and what God is and all of that. And that usually is the kind of stuff that brings us to a class like this or to a unity church. So whatever brings you here, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
This is fascinating. We're glad you're here, Larry. It's fascinating to talk about karma, and how to heal it. And thank you for bringing it up, Sue, with the
And
ancestry.
Lisa, you're like me. We grew up Catholic, and karma was like, you're going to hell. Karma was intense in the Catholic version of it.
Yeah, how fast.
Right. Right.
Well, I remember having Catholic
Kate.
friends back in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and you didn't want to associate with them, and so that was kind of tough on a young guy.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s Catholic, and I have to say, I've told everybody this, I believe the nuns who taught me at Convent of Mercy School were angels. They gave me a very high elevated sense of spirituality. I'm forever grateful for that, because I was growing up in the deep South, where I could have been given that fundamental Baptist stuff, which was prevalent there. And I'm very grateful I got the Convent of Mercy nuns to teach me. But, that idea that we are born in sin, which I think, maybe the Catholics own that, maybe that's their particular thing. But and the idea is that our whole lifetime is a journey of repenting for that sin, right? Yeah. Oh, Kate, you explain
Hey, tell
it
us.
better
Yeah.
than the rest of us. Tell us.
No, it's sacrifice. Yeah. And as much pain as you can muster here on earth will determine the happiness that you have on the other side. So, yeah. And you didn't want to eat meat on Friday, and you didn't want to skip church. I was thinking the other day, I don't know if I was talking with you, Will, but there were little things like, when you were going to receive communion, you didn't want to swallow any water. I mean, this is really, really old, so you can see how long it is. But your whole life was regulated by rules and regulations and by God. If you didn't follow them,
Right.
you were doomed.
Boy, I can so relate to that. And the thing that happens to us is we are good. Our nature is innately good. So we are trying so hard. I was growing up trying so hard to follow all those rules. But, mortal sins could happen like that when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Thinking.
So whether it's Buddhist karma or Catholic mortal sins, I think in our consciousness, we sort of have a feeling that we're going to be punished for something. And I think if Butterworth and Unity could really get the message to a wider audience, that whole idea of punishment, it just damages people so much. I was working with a client this week, a grieving mom, who had this, she came to a realization that her childhood fundamentalist religion had made her feel so inadequate and so not good enough that when her son died, she kind of went, well, of course, because it's my karma, because I wasn't a good enough person. And thank God she's working through that. And she's working with people like me who can help her see it in a very different way. But that just is an example of how damaging that belief in punishment and not being good enough. And religion should never be giving us those feelings. Religion should be just like Butterworth and Unity talk about, hey, God is in you. Own it, claim it, rise up to your best self with it. That's what Jesus was trying to teach us. All right, so chapter 5, Christ is not a person, but a principle. Christ is a level of the particularization of God into man, the focal point through which all the attributes of God are projected into livingness. Now, that's a hell of a sentence, but I think it's, if you really spend some time with it, it's pretty amazing. And so he asks this question, Butterworth, who do you think you are? Meditate on that. Who do you think you are? And that's such a beautiful question, because that phrase has been used as self-punishment, like, who do you think you are? But if we think of it in terms of divinity, who do you think you are? I am a powerful divine being who came here on purpose, like everyone else, to evolve my consciousness and help others evolve. That's who I am. Who do you think you are? And chapter 6, the Beatitudes. I hope you guys can stay a few minutes longer. So chapter 6.
Mhm.
Wait, Sue, can I ask you a question real
Yes.
quick on the end of chapter 5?
Yes.
When they're saying that Hindu, I think it's a Hindustani word or greeting, they're saying namaskar. Is that the same as namaste?
Namaste. Yes.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, I read that too, and I was thinking, it's definitely namaste. And that's, as you guys know, that means I see the God in you. And that's why I've always loved that phrase so much. And nowadays it gets made fun of and everything, but it's such a beautiful understanding that God is in all of us. All right, so chapter 6. I mean, chapter 6 is one of those chapters in this book where please spend a lot of time with it if you haven't had a chance to really read it yet. Spend a day kind of just reading through his understanding of the Beatitudes. What I love so much about this, and I love it from all of my unity training, is that in unity we believe that when Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount and said the Beatitudes, he was replacing the original 10 commandments. So think about that. The original 10 commandments from the Hebrew scriptures say, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And the Beatitudes say, do this. This is how to be. And when, I've always loved them so much. And one of my favorite one has always been, for example, blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And yet I remember thinking, so only people who mourn shall be comforted? Like, what was my understanding of that? And then you read Butterworth's affirmation about that one, and it says, I am grateful for challenges that lead me beyond my extremity to God's opportunity. Well, nothing has ever described grief as beautiful as that, because those of us who've been through grief know that when we are grateful for being broken wide open by our grief, we begin to go on the understanding of our true divine nature and the divine nature of this universe. It forces us to look into that, to study that, because we're trying to find out what is true about this universe. So I love that. And if any of you want to share what your favorite beatitude is, or what you think of how he rewrote these, I'd love to hear it.
I think there was so much, in all of that, but I have 4 simple words that just really screamed at me. And that was simply, Jesus taught or says we need to transform, not conform.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Ooh,
And
I
that,
love it.
but transform, not conform.
From God, if only everybody would hear that, right?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could just go back and read all of these. These Beatitudes have meant so much to me in my life. I grew up being taught by mercy nuns, Convent of Mercy. And so we talked about the word mercy all the time and what that meant. And so I loved this beatitude growing up. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And to me, that's just a way of saying when we are compassionate to others, we also attract compassion from others, just a beautiful way of understanding that flow. And I also love, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And when I was rewriting this one myself, I wrote, blessed are the pure of heart, for they see God. Because only when our heart is open and pure can we really see the divinity in ourselves and in the world and in others and in all the tragedies of life, when our heart is open and we are pure of heart. I love that. All right, thoughts, share.
Sue, I just thought of Julian Lennon and his vow that he broke to sing his dad's song.
Mhm.
And it opened his heart. And, you know, I've listened to it. I'm sure many of you have. He sounds just like his dad. And it's such a beautiful.
He sounds
rend-
exactly like his father. It made me
Yeah.
cry to hear him
Yeah.
sing that.
And I love the guitar. And it's just, Linda, I'm so glad you brought that up about the outpouring of love in so many different ways, you know. So it's evil meets the face of evil meets the face of good. And yeah.
And for those who don't know what Lisa's talking about, John Lennon's son, Julian, had said he would never sing John's songs. I mean, he had a hard childhood because his dad kind of left him for another woman when he was young. And so he's worked through a lot of stuff. But when the Ukrainian war, the Russian war started happening, John's spirit of world peace really seems to have shaken Julian up, and he put out this amazing video of him singing the song Imagine, his father's song. And you can go Google it on YouTube or anywhere. He sounds exactly like his father, John Lennon. It is one of the most moving things you'll ever hear. So yes, war helped Julian make peace with his dad.
so beautiful.
It is. All right, any other, because I don't think we have enough time to go back into breakout rooms, but please tell me if any of you, was there a particular beatitude that stood out to you all of your life, and how do you feel about the way Butterworth has rewritten them, turned them into affirmations?
Well, I find it tough. Blessed are the poor in spirit, I guess that's one thing I'd like to achieve more, spirit in my life, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, he turns that around, Larry. His version of that is, I am open and receptive to the inflow and the outpouring of all there is in God, which is so basically saying that the kingdom of heaven is in all of us. And so when it says for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, really for all of us is the kingdom of heaven. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. Keep going.
Oh, that's fine. I understand. Yeah.
And also this one, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Like I always struggled with that. Like my father taught me growing up, I needed to be meek and humble as a Catholic girl. And I took that to heart, girl. Boy, I was very meek and shy and quiet and humble. And yet what Butterworth does with that is, I am in tune with God. That which is God inspired and God directed shall prevail. And I interpret that to say, that which is God inspired and God directed in me shall guide my life. All right. So I'm sorry, this book is so rich and so deep, and there's just no way we can, you know, dig into all of it, but this class will at least give you a wonderful overview of the book and a great starting place for these conversations. And so next week, if you can do your best with reading the next 6 chapters, just highlight the places that you love or you have questions about. We will do our best to sort of dig into them and discuss them together. And there is no wrong question or wrong idea or wrong discussion. because these are all the most important cosmic principles we can ever talk about and ever explore. This is what life is about. This is why we're here, to learn all this stuff. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate. Love you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very
So
much.
Thank you.
I'll send you the recording just right now in an email, because you'll see the questions in there if you want to go and ponder them on your own as well. And I just want to thank all of you for these beautiful discussions. You're all so amazing. And so it's so inspiring and uplifting to have these conversations. I am grateful. And so it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
As
you.
are
Sue.
we.
Thank
Grateful
you.
for you,
Thank
Sue.
you.
Thank
Grateful for
you.
Great.
Bye all.
Thank you.